Hi guys, good morning. Um, so what I'm going to do is I will break this lecture up into sort of a few parts as usual. And this first part on relevant costing is just almost going to just look at the sort of theory of relevant costing. So sort of what is relevant costing and some of the key issues as to why we're doing it before we throw ourselves into, if you like, the application of relevant costing, especially for your syllabus, which is really about making short-term decisions, really. And that's really the core. So let's begin. Right. So again, our focus here, this issue, what you're always thinking about here, is this issue of looking at short-term decisions. You can see that we've been really looking at short-term decisions for a long time now. And really our focus here is on short-term decisions. So naturally, by extension, when we think of short-term decisions, we are excluding fixed costs in our analysis. No one is saying they're not important. We're just saying that in the short term, we are not thinking about fixed costs. And when I say fixed costs, I mean fixed costs that are as a result of a past obligation, if you like. So we paid rent at the beginning of the year, and now we need to make a decision in June. This is January. We won't think about those fixed costs in January, sorry. If peradventure you do have some fixed costs that now arise within this particular project you are embarking on, well, yes, of course we do. But it's more the idea of sunk, so to speak, pre-decision making, pre-event type of fixed costs that we are committed to anyway. Right. So we apply this idea of relevant costing within certain areas. When we're deciding, we're sort of trying to choose, typically within manufacturing, do we make a product in-house or do we buy this component from outside? And typically, we're really interested, of course, right, in the variable costs of making the product. The problem sometimes, right, when you're talking about components is that if you do full absorption costing, you're bringing in the fixed cost. But think about it, if you're buying a product from outside, you're literally just, when we record it, right, we just go variable cost, right? We just say, oh, well, I've just bought this raw material. I don't think about the fixed cost of the factory of the place I bought it from. I just think, oh, it's a variable cost. So in effect, we also need to look at it from that point of view when making those kind of decisions. Shutdown decisions. So the point again here is that if you imagine you have three areas, A, B, C, and typically you allocate a fixed cost to these areas just because, right, you have rent and you allocate rent, I don't know, 10,000, 10,000 and 20,000. And then you're making your revenue, of course, from each of these departments. So you have your revenue and you have your variable costs. Now you might have revenue here that looks like 80,000 and you might have variable costs here that look like 70,000. So you then say, well, I've made 10,000 and I have to pay this fixed cost of 10. So this division in itself is making a loss. But remember, these things here are apportioned. There is really and truly no, because I'm just saying you apportion this rent. There is no, this 20,000 is not really and truly assigned to this department C. I mean, if this C was a completely different division with its own specific rent, yes, I accept. But where you're apportioning rent, then you need to exclude those fixed costs when making that and really ask the question from a contribution point of view, is this project worth keeping? And then, of course, with further processing costs that we look at, again, we're really interested in the meantime, because we've not quite finished the project, on the variable costs involved. And we just carry on. So really, it's very much, I mean, well, I say project really, when you're deciding, do I carry on with the project, it's really the future cost you're thinking about, right? Imagine you've made a product so far, and it's cost you £10. Now, imagine you could sell this product at 10 right here for 15. You could go ahead and process it for another 4. So the full cost here would be 14. But you need to ask the question, well, how much am I going to be making when I now sell this thing? If you like, it has to be worth it. So for example, imagine you were only going to be able to sell it for 16. If you like, so well, the point is that no, you know what? But I only want to consider just that, that's the relevant cost when I'm thinking of going. So I need to think, no, sell it now. So we actually make, right, £5 as opposed to carry on and then you only make 2. So these kind of decisions about only looking at the variable costs are important for these different examples, and and we need them when making future incremental decisions. I'll explain that a bit more when I get there. So decision making involves making a choice, typically between two or more alternatives. And it says a business should only consider the relevant cash flows that arise. So relevant cash flows, relevant costs, if you like. I mean, this again brings us back to the world of marginal costing, right? Only think about those relevant future existing costs. So a relevant cost cash flow is a future incremental cash flow. Another example I like to use is a machine. This machine is currently you bought it and it cost you 100,000. Someone says let's refurbish. Well, the simple question here is, if you're going to refurbish and you know that it's going to bring you additional, the key point here is that when we talk about refurbishing, if you're going to spend 25,000 refurbishing, the question here is, I mean, imagine it's currently bringing you revenue. So it currently is bringing you revenue of 50,000 every year. So the question here is, if we refurbish at 25, we need to ask the question, what additional revenue is it bringing in? So it's going to go from 50 to maybe, I don't know, 60 to 65 every year. The additional revenue is what I'm interested in. It's the additional 10, the additional 15 that I'm interested in. Right, so it's all about what is the incremental revenue, what is the additional revenue on what I used to get as a result of this refurb. So this 100,000 cost was related to this 50,000. This 100,000 cost was bringing me 50. Now you're telling me do a refurb for 25 and you will get 60. But really what you're saying is do a refurb for 25, marginal cost, and you will get additional marginal revenue of 10 and a 15. So I think it's about just getting it in context, what the definition really is. Again, like you can see what I just did there, I'm only looking at future cash flows, and not what's happened in the past. No, it's done, and no, we don't look at that when making these kind of decisions. Right, good. Right, that's kind of the key point there. And I just highlighted again, incremental, only extra cash flows that occur as a result of the decision should be considered. So extra costs and extra revenues. Ignore fixed costs unless there is an incremental fixed cost as a result of the decision. And ignore committed costs anyway. You would have to pay those anyway. But in terms of making this particular decision, we're only interested in the future relevant costs. Now, there's this economic idea of opportunity cost. And opportunity cost really is a decision-making tool. You see, it's a decision-making tool. It's the sort of tool that makes you decide whether or not you're going to do something. Right? Now, the only reason you go to work is because really it's better than your next alternative option. Really, if you think about it, I mean, if you had a better option than going to work, you would take it. And then that option you've taken is better than going to work. So opportunity cost really says that what is the next best alternative, if you like. You need to think about that because in effect, the fact that you're choosing not to do that, the next best alternative is the result of the choice you have made. It is a cost. I think one way I always try and talk about it is really this question of, again, it's about decisions. It's more about decisions. And it helps us weigh up a decision. So, for example, the example I like to give is totally random, is should Tiger Woods mow his lawn? I mean, Tiger Woods can mow his lawn in, I don't know, 2 hours. Tiger Woods' gardener can actually mow the lawn in, say, 3 hours. But should Tiger Woods mow his lawn? You might say, oh, yeah, Tiger Woods can do it in a shorter amount of time. That's true. But every hour, this is the key point of opportunity cost, every hour that Tiger Woods mows his lawn, he could be playing golf and making so much more money. So if he mows his lawn, he's losing out on playing golf. So really, that is important to consider, this cost of losing out on playing golf. Since you have chosen to do this, we need to think about that cost. It helps us decide, should we really do it? Are we sure we've checked that the next best alternative isn't better? And we'll see simple. I think there's a little gentle case study on it to think about um, of that process. Right. Okay. The other thing here is that we're only interested in cash flows. Depreciation is a purely accrual accounting idea. It's not a real cash flow. It's just this thing expense we put through, right, for the matching concept. So we're really interested in cash events. So be wary of depreciation when they put it in. So let's look at a couple of things here, just to get the idea of relevance. This question of relevance. I'll will try and stop after in a few minutes. Identify which of the following costs are relevant. Your salary to be paid to a market researcher who will oversee the development of a new product. It's a new post, and it's created especially for this new product. So the key point here is, if you had just assigned someone on the job, who was already working to look at this project, well, you're already paying a salary anyway, so it's not a relevant cost. But if you were now going to take someone on, pay them an additional salary of 12 grand, technically it's even a fixed cost, but it is relevant to when you're deciding, do I take this project, right? Because it's a new cost you will have to deal with. Good, so it's new future costs. So you can think of relevant costs like that, like new future costs that you have to think about. So yes, this cost is relevant. It's a new post, it's a new product, it didn't exist before. You have this one here, and overheads are always a nice one. Whenever you see a question that says anything like along the lines of overheads will reduce as a result of this, well, sorry, not overheads will reduce, the overhead absorption rate will reduce. Well, the overheads themselves have not reduced, if you like, so that's not relevant. The overheads are there, so they're sunk. What is important is it new? Is it additional? What's going on? So here we have 2,500 additional monthly running costs of a new machine to be purchased for an established product. This will save on labor time. So you can see here that this is an additional cost. But the fixed overheads will reduce by £100 per month. The fixed is absorbed, not the fixed overheads themselves. So the 2,500, if you like, is relevant, definitely, but the savings in overhead absorption is not, since we are not told that the total overheads will change. Office cleaning expenses of £125 for next month. This is just watch it carefully. What they're saying here is that you pay these office expenses for £125. The office is cleaned by contractors, and the contract can be cancelled by giving 1 month's notice. So you want to cancel the contract, but you are already committed to paying next month anyway, before you kind of can cancel the contract. So it's not relevant. You're committed. It's fixed, technically. You don't have a choice there. So this particular cost is not relevant. But, of course, if you had any others going forward, you would make a saving from then on. You would say, well, I don't have to pay that cost anymore. It's no longer relevant. But for next month, it is. Right, okay. And that's kind of and expenses of £75 paid to the marketing manager. It says that this was to reimburse the manager for the cost of traveling to meet a client. Well, first of all, this is not a relevant cost. This is just a sunk traveling cost. Is the cost relevant to the decision to continue negotiating? Well, no, it isn't. It just isn't. It's just part of your negotiating. It's a fixed cost. There's nothing. It doesn't affect whether or not a decision will be made or not. Yeah, and that's kind of that. So I talk about this talk about opportunity cost, and typically when you see opportunity cost, it's always about value. So when you in exam questions, you're always looking for the contribution. This is the value you're losing. You can see I talked about Tiger Woods. It's always about value. Always about value. I'm going to stop at 15 minutes. It's always about value. That's what you're losing out on, right? And I think they do a good example here. It's always about what value am I losing by choosing one plan. I need to think about that. Magic question is, what am I losing out by taking on this new project? Not only must I consider the cost of the new venture, but the benefit of the opportunity cost or contribution that I'm losing out on. So it says here a new project. So you have a machine sitting there. This is implicit, so you can see how this works. You want to make a decision, and you have a machine sitting there, and you want to use it for this new project. But you have other options, you know. The other option is you can sell it. This sounds like a silly thing to say, but you could sell it. So you have to decide, is it worth it or do I sell it? So here we are, information concerning the machine. The original purchase price is 20,000. The current net book value, if you like, is 5,000. The estimated current selling price of the machine, if I choose to sell the machine now, I'm going to make $4,000. And this is the current net book value. So what is the relevant opportunity cost if you choose to carry out the project? Well, the opportunity cost, of course, is that if you carry out the project, you lose out on selling, if you like, the machine for 4,000. You lose out on the income from selling the machine for 4,000. So, so you always have to think, what's the benefit, if you like, from this thing? It better be better than me losing out on selling the machine. So it's just that it's the consideration of all the alternatives, and the opportunity costing for you guys most of the time is the fact that you've chosen to pursue this project, so you're basically losing out on a better option. It's just consider what the next best alternative is, and whatever you're choosing to do better be better than that option. Otherwise, stay at home and sleep, or pursue that other ambition if that would be a better option. I meant stay at home and sleep with reference to work. Right. Key point, yes, we are discussing cash positions, and there we are. So like I said, depreciation is not a cash flow. Profit or loss on disposal is an accounting event. Oh, yes, sorry, yes, we'll see this in the next, yes. We'll talk, the original purchase price of existing machinery is a sunk cost, and net book value is an accounting event. So what we're looking at, we're really looking at cash flows, and we'll see some examples in a second in the next video. 17 minutes, sorry. So see you in the next video. I'm trying to make them as short as possible so you're not too bored. Okay, see you soon.